When legacy walks through the front door, every institution has a history, names carved in stone, faces on forgotten portraits, and documents buried deep in vaults. But what happens when one of those buried names doesn't stay buried? When legacy walks through the front door, wearing red, this story begins not with a scandal or a robbery, but with a simple transaction. A woman, poised and precise, walks into a prestigious bank with a check. On the surface, it's routine, but beneath it lies a storm that's been brewing for over 6 decades. Her name, Charlotte Monroe. She doesn't come to beg, argue, or explain. She comes to reclaim. And as you follow her footsteps through these marble halls, through suspense, confrontation, and revelation, you'll realize this is more than a mystery. It's a reckoning. It's a reminder. And it all begins where most stories end, at the teller window. The woman in the red coat enters the rain whispered against the windows of downtown Atlanta's oldest financial institution, Heritage Financial Bank. Inside, marble floors glistened, the scent of leather chairs and fresh espresso lingered in the air, and the low murmur of transactions echoed like a rehearsed opera. That's when she entered. She wasn't rushed. She didn't fumble with an umbrella or hesitate at the door. Instead, she moved like a woman who'd been here before, perhaps too many times to count. She wore a bold, blood-red coat that stood in stark contrast to the corporate navy and gray tones around her. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the tile, sharp and deliberate, like the ticking of a count, no one knew had begun. The security guard glanced at her, then did a double take. There was something disarming in the way she carried herself. Not arrogance authority, not the kind you wear on your sleeve, but the kind that makes people sit straighter without knowing why. She approached teller #3. Jeremy, a young man barely 6 months into the job, straightened up at her arrival. Her presence made him nervous, though he couldn't explain why. "Welcome to Heritage Financial," he greeted with the practiced smile of someone who hadn't yet had a real problem at his window. "How may I assist you today?" Without a word, she pulled a cream-colored check from her designer handbag and placed it beneath the glass partition. Jeremy glanced at it casually, then froze. $2,300,000. Drawn on their bank. He looked back at her. Calm, collected, her eyes met his with serene expectation, not defensiveness, not even curiosity. She'd done this before, or at least, she made it look that way. "I'd like to cash this," she said simply, her voice smooth and commanding. Suspicion behind the smile. Jeremy's smile flickered for the first time. He wasn't unfamiliar with large checks. Heritage Financial served elite clients, business owners, athletes, trust fund heirs, but those people usually made appointments. They came in with a team or a heads up. This woman, no appointment, no entourage, no warning, just a massive check and a name that rang no bells. "I'll need 2 forms of identification, please," he said, injecting more authority into his tone than usual. Bank policy for withdrawals of this size. She gave him a look, neutral, neither annoyed nor surprised, then reached calmly into her bag and retrieved a leather wallet. From it, she handed over a Georgia driver's license and a U.S. passport, both current, both displaying the same name, Charlotte Elaine Monroe. Jeremy scrutinized the photos. They matched her perfectly. The name matched the check, but still, something gnawed at him. Most people, even wealthy ones, react to the request for ID with some emotion, impatience, confusion, irritation, but this woman, nothing, as if she expected resistance, as if she'd lived through it many times. "Thank you, Ms. Monroe," he said slowly. "I'll just need to verify the check with the account before proceeding." She nodded. "Do what you need to do." Her tone wasn't defiant, it was permissive, like she was letting him play out his little procedure. Jeremy walked toward the manager's office, check and IDs in hand, his heart beating slightly faster than usual. The account name seemed familiar, like something he'd read in old documents or heard in a training seminar. But he couldn't place it. Why would a woman who looked barely 40 walk in with a multi-million-dollar check, zero concern, and a name that sent shivers down his spine? He didn't know yet, but he was about to find out. Calm composure, alarming confidence, Jeremy returned to his desk and glanced through the lobby glass at the woman in red, Charlotte Monroe. She stood there, unmoving, her presence strangely still amidst the swirl of customers and routine transactions. One arm rested lightly on her purse, the other at her side. Her eyes casually scanned the room like someone surveying land they already owned. He couldn't shake it. The way she carried herself wasn't just poised. It was grounded, like someone who had weathered storms and walked through doors that tried to stay shut. Most clients, when questioned over large checks, reacted with offense or insecurity, but not her. There wasn't even a flicker of doubt in her eyes. As he typed her account number into the system, his unease deepened. Her expression, still knowing, unshaken, wasn't the look of someone waiting to be approved. It was the look of someone waiting for others to catch up. Jeremy, Claire, his manager, said from behind him, "Everything okay?" He jumped slightly. "I'm not sure. I've got a check here for over $2 million from a woman named Charlotte Monroe. The ID matches, but something feels off." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Off how?" He hesitated. "She's too calm. Like this is her bank." Claire smirked. Everyone thinks it's their bank when they have a big check. But Jeremy wasn't smiling. He showed her the name again. That's when her expression changed. She knew the name. Without a word, she took over the keyboard and pulled up the account herself. A signature from the past. Claire's fingers flew across the keys. The account appeared in seconds, and so did the first anomaly. Opened January 17, 1965. Claire frowned. That can't be right. The account had no recent updates until today, but the foundation was ironclad. Claire clicked through the archived data, noting something that made her stomach turn. There was no record of Charlotte Monroe aging in this system. Her ID showed a birth date of 1979, yet this account had been opened 14 years before she was supposedly born. Jeremy leaned closer. "That's impossible." Claire didn't answer. She was too busy scrolling through the historical archives of the bank, things even Jeremy hadn't accessed. She filtered through old documents, founding papers, scanned signatures from the original establishment of the bank. Then it happened there, buried in the 1965 scan charter. Charlotte E. Monroe, co-signer. Claire clicked the document open in full view. Her heart pounded. The signature was elegant, powerful, and unmistakably clear. And identical to the one on the check in her hand. "Is this some kind of forgery?" Jeremy whispered. Claire shook her head slowly. "No, this isn't forged. It's exact, too exact. This isn't someone mimicking a signature. This is someone who wrote it. Then and now." Her mind reeled. How could the same woman sign a legal document 60 years ago and still look not a day over 40? She printed the signature from the founding charter and laid it beside the one from today's check. Jeremy stared at them both, his face pale. It was like staring at a time loop. Claire's voice dropped. "I need to speak with her, now." A signature that time forgot. Claire's heels echoed as she walked back into the main lobby, her grip tight around the printed signature from 1965. The bank bustled with its usual midday rhythm, phones ringing, papers shuffling, clients murmuring, but for Claire everything had gone eerily silent. Charlotte Monroe still stood at teller #3, untouched by time or tension. "MS Monroe," Claire said carefully, her voice steady but cautious. "May I speak with you privately?" Charlotte tilted her head slightly, as if she had been expecting that question all along. Without hesitation, she nodded. Of course. They moved into the glass-walled executive office, Claire's domain. Once seated, Claire laid out the documents side by side, the signature from the charter, the signature from the check, and Charlotte's ID. Charlotte glanced at them for no more than a heartbeat. "I assume you have questions," she said, her tone calm, almost amused. Claire sat down slowly. "These two signatures, they're identical. One is from a legal charter signed 60 years ago, the founding document of this very bank. The other is from you, today." Charlotte offered a soft smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, I remember signing that document quite well." Claire blinked. "You're telling me you actually signed the original charter in 1965? "I'm not telling you anything you don't already suspect," she said gently. What you're really wondering is, how can I be sitting here looking like this? The weight of the moment pressed in. Claire felt like she was caught in the middle of a movie scene where logic bowed to mystery, and reality blurred into legend. Charlotte leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs elegantly. Some things defy easy explanations, MS Davis, but let me assure you, my name, my signature, and this bank are not strangers. The impossibility of her existence. Claire's throat tightened. This woman was too calm, too collected. Either she was a master manipulator, or she was telling the impossible truth. You expect me to believe you signed that document in 1965? Claire asked, voice sharpening. That you're, what, some kind of immortal? Charlotte let out a small, almost playful chuckle. Do I expect you to believe it? No, but whether you do or not changes nothing. She stood, walking slowly toward the tall windows, the red of her coat casting a bold silhouette against the natural light. The real question isn't how I'm still here. The real question is, why was I buried from this bank's history? Claire blinked. What do you mean? Charlotte turned back to face her, the warmth now gone from her voice. My legacy, my trust, my contribution to the founding of Heritage Financial, scrubbed from public record, quietly erased over time. Even your training materials credit only 2 male co-founders. Claire went cold. She'd read those materials. She remembered the names, Mathers and Ellington. There was no Monroe. How could they erase you from the bank you helped build? She whispered. Charlotte stepped forward, her eyes sharp. With greed, with power, and with silence. That silence ends today. Claire stared at her, her mind racing through possibilities. This wasn't a scam. It wasn't a bluff. This woman knew too much. And her story, as unbelievable as it was, began to fit together like pieces of a puzzle hidden in plain sight. MS Monroe, what is it that you want? Claire finally asked. Charlotte smiled again, this time with a chill behind it. To be remembered, to reclaim what was stolen, and to make sure no one ever forgets again. And just like that, Claire realized this wasn't a simple withdrawal, this was a reckoning. Revelation of the founder. Claire's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the document printouts again. There was no denying it now. The woman standing before her wasn't just any you client. She was a ghost of the institution's past, walking flesh and blood, and she wanted her truth recognized. You said you built this bank. Claire whispered, the weight of those words hanging in the air. What do you mean by that? Charlotte didn't hesitate. In 1964, before your founding partners even had the capital to begin construction, I provided the seed funding. I was an entrepreneur, an investor, and a silent partner on purpose. At the time, a black woman on the board of a financial institution in Georgia would have sparked riots, lawsuits. Possibly worse, so I stayed in the shadows, but I signed the charter, Claire. That's my blood in the ink. Claire leaned forward, stunned. Why didn't you come forward earlier? Charlotte gave her a long look, filled with both sadness and resolve. I watched, I waited. For decades, I believed the legacy would speak for itself, but as time passed, my name faded from records, not by mistake, by design. The men I trusted turned opportunistic. They rewrote history. I became a myth, a whisper, until eventually, a ghost, and now I've returned to reclaim what was built on my back. Claire looked down at the signatures again. The weight of the truth was undeniable. She was speaking not just to a client, but a living founder of Heritage Financial Bank. The silence in the room was no longer awkward. It was reverent. You want credit? Claire asked cautiously. Charlotte's eyes darkened. I want restoration. I want justice. And I want the 7 names who orchestrated my erasure removed. Publicly. Corruption unearthed. Claire's face paled. 7 names. Charlotte reached into her sleek leather bag and pulled out a gold, embossed envelope. She placed it on the table with deliberate grace, but the gesture carried the weight of a guillotine. In that envelope, she said, are the names of the current executives, board members, and legal advisors who have spent the last decade siphoning funds from the Monroe Trust and burying the trail. Claire's hands hovered over the envelope, unsure whether she wanted to open Pandora's box. How do you know this? Charlotte's tone turned steel, sharp. Because they never deleted my access. I've watched every transfer, every forged document, every meeting where my name was deliberately omitted. I was patient, but I'm done waiting." Jeremy, standing quietly at the doorway, stepped closer, clearly rattled. "Are you saying people in this building have been committing fraud?" Charlotte's eyes flicked to him. "I'm saying this bank has been living off stolen legacy for years, and today that ends." Claire opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly typed list. 7 names, including 2 senior VP, 1 compliance officer, and a name she never expected: her own assistant. Each one had a role: creating fake audit trails, diverting trust payments, tampering with digital archives, and ensuring Charlotte Monroe's name never resurfaced in public record. Claire felt sick. This wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was a scandal, deep-rooted and well-hidden. "Why come to me?" she asked, almost in a whisper. Charlotte answered without missing a beat: "Because you're not on the list." Claire sat back, her mind racing. "So, what now?" Charlotte stood, adjusting her coat. "You deliver that list to your board, noon tomorrow. If they act, this stays quiet. If they hesitate, I go public, with proof." Claire met her eyes, both frightened and strangely inspired. She wasn't just in the presence of a woman seeking justice. She was in the presence of a storm that had waited 60 years to be heard, and now nothing would silence her again. A warning delivered with quiet thunder the next morning, just before noon. The boardroom at Heritage Financial was unusually full. Senior members, legal advisors, and executive staff sat in tense silence, many unaware of the storm brewing just outside the boardroom door. Claire stood at the head of the polished mahogany table, fingers resting on the sealed gold. Embossed envelope she had received less than 24 hours ago. "Before we begin," she said, her voice steady, "we have a matter that needs urgent attention." The chairman leaned forward. "What is this about, Claire?" With one motion, she opened the envelope and slid the printed list across the table. "This list contains the names of 7 individuals associated with serious misconduct, embezzlement, archival fraud, and a conspiracy to erase the legacy of a founding partner." There was a collective inhale. Murmurs rippled. No one reached for the list. No one moved. Then she said the name, Charlotte Monroe. Dead silence. The chairman blinked. "Charlotte, who?" Claire looked directly at him. "Charlotte E. Monroe, one of the original signers of our founding charter. The same woman who walked into this bank yesterday to withdraw her own money, only to find she'd been systematically erased from our institution's history." One of the lawyers scoffed. "This is impossible. The bank had only 2 founding partners." Claire responded coolly, "Wrong. You just never saw the original documents. I have them. I've seen the signatures, and they're identical, 60 years apart." Before anyone could respond, the double doors to the boardroom opened, and there she was. Charlotte Monroe entered like she owned the air in the room. No security, no appointment, just her red coat, her grace, and a truth so powerful it silenced a dozen men at once. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said softly, placing a small drive on the table. "That contains your trail of deceit emails, forged documents, financial reroutes, even internal memos about wiping me from your official archives, all dated, all verified." The chairman opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "You have until end of day," she continued, "to remove those 7 names from power and begin a full restoration of my legacy. If not, I release everything to the press, the regulators, and the public." Then, with the same unshaken calm, she turned and walked out, leaving only the echo of her heels, and a boardroom frozen in reckoning. The legacy restored 2 weeks later, the Heritage Financial Bank lobby looked different. The press had kept quiet, for now. The board had acted swiftly. All 7 individuals named by Charlotte had either resigned or been terminated. Internal investigations confirmed every allegation. A special committee had been formed to audit the Monroe Trust and correct the historical records. But the most visible change stood near the grand staircase under a newly installed spotlight, a tall bronze plaque mounted on a stone pedestal. It read, "In honor of Charlotte Elaine Monroe, visionary, founder, architect of justice. Her legacy, once forgotten, now anchors the foundation of this institution." Claire stood before the plaque with Jeremy beside her. "They finally got it right," she said quietly. Jeremy nodded, still a little dazed. She didn't just change the bank, she rewrote history. From the glass doors, a sleek black car pulled up. Charlotte stepped out, red coat flowing behind her like a royal cloak. She entered the building, and this time, everyone noticed. Staff stood, clients turned. Whispers of recognition echoed through the lobby. She walked to the center of the room and looked up at her plaque. A soft smile tugged at her lips. Claire approached her, holding out a folder, the official documents. Your name has been restored to the charter. Your trust is reinstated. The apology letter from the board is inside. Charlotte took the folder and met Claire's eyes. Good, not just for me, but for the future. What happens now? Claire asked. Charlotte glanced around the room. The people, the architecture, the legacy. I don't need to run this bank, she said, her voice rich with quiet power. I already built it. Now I'll just watch and make sure it never forgets again. And with that, Charlotte Monroe turned and walked toward the grand staircase, the light from her legacy burning brighter than ever before. The signature that couldn't be silenced. Some legacies are written in ink. Others are etched in time. Charlotte Monroe didn't need permission to be remembered. She simply needed the world to stop forgetting. Her story isn't just about wealth or revenge. It's about truth long overdue, about a name once erased being carved back into history louder than ever, the same way she walked in, with calm grace and unwavering purpose. She walked out, leaving behind a building forever changed. No alarms, no outbursts, just the sound of quiet justice echoing down marble halls. And now anyone who enters Heritage Financial Bank, whether client, clerk, or CEO, will pass beneath her name, because Charlotte Monroe didn't just own the account. She wrote the charter, and now everyone remembers the signature that couldn't be silenced. Some legacies are written in ink. Others are etched in time. Charlotte Monroe didn't need permission to be remembered. She simply needed the world to stop forgetting. Her story isn't just about wealth or revenge. It's about truth long overdue, about a name once erased being carved back into history louder than ever, the same way she walked in, with calm grace and unwavering purpose. She walked out, leaving behind a building forever changed. No alarms, no outbursts, just the sound of quiet justice echoing down marble halls. And now anyone who enters Heritage Financial Bank, whether client, clerk, or CEO, will pass beneath her name, because Charlotte Monroe didn't just own the account. She wrote the charter, and now everyone remembers.